Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. And it's good to see that we don't only have Joburg in the room, so that is really awesome. It's great to have you with us. Thank you for your time, for joining us today. And this is Clear Dialogues. It's a new webinar series that we're looking forward to building over the next coming months. And the idea is really simple, is that we could create a space for open and meaningful conversation around issues that matter to monitoring, evaluation, and research and learning. So while today we're talking about AI and human judgment, this is just the beginning. We do plan to have conversation on different topics and perspectives and issues really that shape our field. So while Clear AA is hosting the clear dialogues, maybe let me start by introducing who we are as Clear AA for those who may not know. We work to strengthen M&E systems, evaluation capacity, and evidence use and learning across English-speaking African countries. And we work together with a network of about six other CLEAR centers, or five other, we're six in total. And together we are implementing partners of the Global Evaluation Initiative. And we at AA, we are situated in at Wits University, where we are hosted, and we are, as mentioned, implementing partners of the Global Evaluation Initiative in the region where we operate. So all the other centers, they are implementing partners in the regions where they are. But for today's conversation, however, we are pleased to be partnering with ClearPath Mel rather, and they are an emerging organization in the Mel space focused on strengthening evidence-driven decision making and improving developmental outcomes through monitoring, evaluation, and learning. Their work also places emphasis on institutional capacity, on ethical and community centered approaches to development and supporting stronger evidence use. And as an emerging organizations themselves, they recognize the importance of learning and of knowledge exchange and creating space where people can use questions, can build confidence as they want to do in the space, build their own confidence being an emergent organization, and really grow together with us in this practice. And if you follow our work, you'll know that we are big supporters of young emerging evaluators. So it was no brainer that we would be, very accepting and very comfortable to have them facilitate this session with us today. So I am joined by Mapaseka Mulala and Octavia Patel, who you will have the pleasure of meeting in a short bit. So today's conversation is about exploring where AI can add genuine value to monitoring and evaluation, and where the limitations are, and why human judgment remains essential to credible, ethical, and context sensitive evaluation practice, particularly in the space where we operate. So I'm not going to dwell so much on that. I think Mapaseka will help us frame it a little bit better together with you, and we'll be introducing our panel for the day, who will take us through the depth of this discussion. So Mapaseka, over to you.
Thank you, Talitha. I hope I'm audible. You know how the mute buttons like to play hide and seek. Thank you for that intro. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge Dr. Ayabulelwa Tlakavu, who was meant to join us this afternoon, but unfortunately had an emergency that required his attention. And although we are sad that he couldn't be with us, our two expert speakers will help us carry some of the themes and perspectives that he was going to bring into the conversation today, so that we can still benefit from that insight today. Okay, so I just want to begin with a quick question just to get our minds working for a bit. When you hear the word evaluation, especially in today's increasingly world shaped by technology and AI, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it evidence? Is it reports? You can just quickly drop one word, that first thing that comes to your mind, in the chat, and Talitha will check that for us. Is it people? Is it learning? Is it education maybe? Or perhaps is it AI? Just drop the one word that comes to your mind when you think about evaluation in today's tech-savvy world. Okay, I'm not able to see the chat on my side.
I can help you. So there's learning. Learning is coming up, and evidence, assessment, and LLM, accountability, results,
Yeah, perfect.
examine, decision making.
Wonderful. And I think that is actually a very good place for us to start today, to start today's conversation, because evaluation sits somewhere between all of these things that we've mentioned, right? We collect data, we need to understand what that data is telling us. We generate this evidence, like you said, but we still need that human judgment to decide what it means and what it is that we should do with that data. And now that we have all these technologies that can analyze, that can synthesize and process information at the speed of light, something that we wouldn't have imagined a few years ago, right? So that brings us to a really interesting question today. As AI becomes more embedded in evaluation, where does that leave the human judgment? Where does it fit? And perhaps an even more uncomfortable question to ask ourselves: what happens to the evidence itself when AI becomes, a part of how people communicate, how people think, and how they share their lived experiences? Perhaps the real challenge is understanding how these two work together, right? Without us losing that human element, that human touch behind this evidence. And today's conversation becomes really interesting, right? Let us bring in Dr. Stephen Masvauri. I can't see you, Doc. Are you here?
Yes, yes, I'm here. I'm here.
There you are. There you are. All right, Dr. Masvauri comes into this conversation with extensive experience in research, evaluation, and learning systems, including more than 15 years working across development sectors in Africa, right? Dr. Masvauri is a senior researcher and M&E technical specialist at the University of the Witwatersrand under Clear Evaluation Anglophone Africa, which is Clear AA for short. He holds a PhD in development studies alongside qualifications spanning in the social science and development studies. His work has included strengthening the country-led monitoring evaluation systems, with interests ranging from local government and social protection to climate change adapting and evaluative learning. Now, his experience is particularly relevant to today's discussion because we are talking about AI in evaluation. And it is very easy for us to focus on the technology itself, right? What can AI do? How can it quickly analyze data? Or how can it make our work more efficient? But Dr. Masvaura will bring us back to the more fundamental question, and perhaps maybe the most important question for today. How do we introduce new technologies without losing the judgment and the context that make evaluation meaningful? So, Doc, we're really looking forward to hearing your perspectives on where AI can add value to evaluation and where we still need that human judgment to firmly come back in the room. Okay, and that brings us to our second esteemed speaker, who is Dr. Mzamani Ntaka. Doc, are you in the room with us?
I am available and I hope you can see me.
Hello, I can see you now. I can see you now.
Thanks.
Thank you. And Dr. Mdaka will bring our second perspective into this conversation. Because even if we can all agree that AI has potential, and there's always another question: what needs to be in place for organizations and M&E systems to use it responsibly, right? Dr. Mdaka brings this very different but highly complementary perspective. Dr. Mdaka has more than 2 decades of experience in education and system strengthening, having worked as a mathematics teacher, head of department, and school principal, alongside extensive experience in project management and education systems. He currently leads the Integrated District Improvement Program at the National Education Collaboration Trust, working across education systems and strengthening the district's functionality and improving learning outcomes. Right? Dr. Mdaka holds a PhD in curriculum studies and a postgrad diploma in monitoring and evaluation from WITS. And I think Dr. Mdaka's perspective will particularly be important today because he will move the conversation from can we use AI to what does responsible AI integration look like in real organization or in M&E systems, right? We're talking about institutional readiness. We're talking about data governance, accountability, skills, and capacity, and the structures that safeguard that we need to exist when AI becomes part of our everyday M&E practices. Because having access to AI is one thing, right? Having access to the tools, that's one thing. But having the right systems, the right policies, the capabilities, and the governance to ensure that we use it responsibly is something very different. While Dr. Masvaura will help us explore this relationship between AI, evidence, and human judgment, Dr. Mdaka will take us further into the question of how our institutions and M&E systems need to evolve for an AI-enabled future. Now, this is going to give us two sides to a very important conversation. How do we use AI to strengthen evaluation without compromising the human judgment, accountability, authenticity that evaluation is ultimately meant to protect? Dr. Mdaka, we look forward to hearing your perspective. Now, with that, I will hand over to Dr. Masvaure, who will carry us through the conversation. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you, Mapaseka, good afternoon, everyone. I think I want to emphasize that when my bio was being read, I was regarded as an expert, but I don't think that I'm an expert in AI. So what I'm going to be, because AI basically is something that is currently emerging in the evaluation space. And I think almost even the audience, we are all still grappling with with AI, and most importantly, how to use it in a much more ethical way, also preserving the integrity of evaluations. So I didn't prepare any presentation because this is just a talk. And if I had prepared a presentation, probably you end up blaming me for letting AI prepare my presentation because we use generative AI to actually generate content for our presentations. So, so given the topic, I was thinking about the topic, and I think it made me start realizing that as evaluators, probably we have reached a point where we now need to start discussing in terms of what is the actual role of the evaluator and what is the actual role of AI in the evaluation space also. This is quite very important in the evaluation space because probably there's a misconception currently that says that because of the advent of AI or the emergence of AI in the evaluation space, then probably evaluators are going to end up without jobs. Probably organization will just do they just use AI, then they evaluate their programs and then they move on. But I don't think that's it. So my talk is going to be centered around 3 key points. The first one is actually probably to define in terms of what is the role of the evaluator and also what is the role of AI in that mix. Then the second point that I wanted to make, I'm going to make is actually the issue of old wine in new skins. odd problems that can also be replicated by the use of AI. And I think most of you understand that we are currently, there are quite some significant challenges in the evaluation space that we're trying to deal with. And this actually extends to issues to do with, it might be equitable evaluation, decolonizing evaluation, made in Africa evaluation. They are all there to address specific problems. So that's the second point that I'm also going to allude to. And then the issue of the use of AI and ethics, and also the integrity of evaluation. And finally, probably the relationship between AI and learning. So I'm just going to pontificate on those specific points. Not as an expert, but as someone else who is observing what is currently happening. So the first point, I want to go to the point where people are arguing that probably as evaluators, we are going to end up without without jobs. Why? Because AI can actually do the job of evaluators. You might be an evaluator, you might be a researcher. AI can actually probably perform some of the duties that we tend to perform in our day-to-day life. So I want to say this. There is a misconception in terms of what is the role of the evaluator. I don't think that the evaluator is there to generate evidence. But the evaluator is actually there as an arbiter of the quality of development interventions. And I think in one of the definitions of evaluation, an evaluator actually is supposed to pass a judgment on the quality of a development intervention. And AI can do that because AI is not human. If AI can only help us to actually do that. So from my perspective, how I look at AI is an addition to the toolbox of an evaluator. So we are supposed to be happy to actually have AI, because it can actually assist us in our role as evaluative thinkers and sense makers of development intervention. So we are still going to have jobs, but our jobs are actually going to be made a little bit better by AI, because we now have an addition of new tools in our toolbox. So moving from that, because I want to also highlight one of the biggest challenges, where as humans we actually interface with AI, and we can actually resolve that challenge. I think most of you on this call, you are evaluators, and you know the tight timelines, especially for most of the evaluation that we conduct. Probably you're expected to finish an evaluation in 3-6 months. And we always complain that we actually don't have time to think and digest most of the things that we experience in the evaluation, so that we actually make better evaluative judgment. And in this sense now, because AI actually, we can use it maybe probably to do some some analysis, and also other components of other tasks in the evaluation process. We now have actually more time to actually sit and think about the bigger things in terms of what does it actually mean, and make sense of what we are generating from that evaluation. So AI can actually help us to actually do that. But without human control, AI actually has got no capacity to conduct an evaluation, because basically we actually have we actually need to use AI to conduct those specific evaluation, to control it. Then on the second point that I wanted to make, I think the architecture of AI, whatever type of AI, whether it's generative or whatever, I think most of you understand that you use large language models, the algorithms, and when whatever tool that you're using, whatever AI tool that you're using, basically it is being trained on past evaluations that have been conducted. And those past evaluations, some of them, they're quite very problematic, because at times they probably the perspectives there are basically Eurocentric. They value specific methodologies as compared to other methodologies. They probably pervade specific opinions on specific issues. So basically, AI actually mirrors what is already there. And for us as evaluators currently in the Global South, we always say that there's a little bit of a challenge there. Why? Because some of the perspectives that are pervaded in those evaluations are not good enough. That's the reason why people are talking about made in Africa evaluation, decolonizing evaluation, probably addressing issues to do with equity in evaluation, context, culture, all those specific issues. And you might find out that most evaluations are actually stripped of the context and culture. So AI does not have that capacity to say probably you need to address those. So it just regurgitates the old problems that we've been facing in evaluation. So that's where, as humans now, we need to come in and say, hold on, if you are going to be using AI now, we want to generate better evaluations. And also we want to better train our AI tools to actually produce evaluation that are actually acceptable in our context. So it's quite very important. We don't want to repeat the very same problems that we have in evaluation through the new models of AI. Then the third point that I wanted to make is actually regarding the issue of ethics. I think we've indeed reached the point where we've actually set as evaluators to say, how do we approach the use of AI in evaluation? Should our reports actually be generated by AI tools, or should we actually be the ones who are actually supposed to be writing those reports? Shouldn't we be the one who are actually going to sit and actually make sense of the data that we collect and actually develop a report and recommendations, as compared to just feed everything into AI? So it's a point that we need to, as humans, as evaluators, we actually need to probably we need to come up with a protocol in terms of how to use AI. Because if allow generative AI to actually write our reports, what's going to happen is actually that we're actually going to end up a organization feeling that there's no need to employ an evaluator. Why? Because generative AI can actually write the report and make recommendations, and then people can move on with their lives. Then the last point that I wanted to make, I think this one touches also on the monitoring aspect. I think that most of the organizations, they've been suffering, especially from the aspect of learning during program implementation. And I think as evaluators, we've seen some of the things that could have been corrected during program implementation not being picked up by the program implementers. A problem starts probably in the second month of implementation. Then the evaluator actually picked it up 5 years later to say this problem actually emerged during your phase of implementation. So I do believe that we can actually use predictive models that are backed by AI to let organizations actually also learn from their data before an evaluator actually comes in. So you can see that from the from the perspective of adaptive management learning in organizations, AI can actually be quite very important, especially because it can synthesize data. It can also tell the program implementers where they're doing right and where they're doing wrong. But they also need to have that evaluative thinking in them to actually make decisions based in terms of what probably AI dashboards are actually telling them. So it's quite very important. We can actually use AI to address that specific problem. So let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Masvaure, for such a great insight, and good morning, colleagues. My name is Octavie Patel, and I'll be facilitating the dialogue between Dr. Masvaure and myself. You know, Doc, we are living in a time where artificial intelligence is transforming every field, and monitoring and evaluation, we know that is no exception. So we know that AI can process massive data set, it can detect patterns, and it can summarize findings in a second. But as fast as technology moves, it raises a crucial question to say, where does machine efficiency end and human judgment begin? With that said, my first question for you will be, if AI increasingly mediates how people communicate and formulate their responses, what does this mean
for what we consider an authentic human evidence in evaluation?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. It also borders on ethics, basically. So AI is not supposed to replace probably humans, whether as the evaluator or as a participant or as a community. So the key issue that we need to deal with regarding your question, the authenticity of humanness in our evaluations. Let me approach it in this way. I think we all understand that every development intervention actually brings maybe goods or services to resolve a specific community problem. When probably targeted communities, they take those goods and services to address their problem. And how they use those goods and services to address the problem is completely different from community to community, from individual to individual, from household to household. Now, when it comes to understanding a specific program, we actually need the raw data, where we actually have to go and actually speak to the people without using AI. But we know there are some evaluators who might actually be quite very unethical, who can even generate transcripts from using AI and say this is data collection. And I think these are issues that also have been there even when we're using the paper-based way of collecting data, stuff like that. So the key issue is about it's either organizations and evaluators. We really need to say we need to keep collecting that raw data and actually having a look at it and actually feel it, so that we actually don't use the human touch, or else we are going to end up AI evaluating another AI, and we miss miss the whole point of why are we even doing evaluations. So I'll stop here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That's interesting. There are some of us to whom that AI has become our next of kin, Some of us, we breathe AI. We use AI for academic purposes. Some we use AI for work related stuff. But then the question is, are we using AI responsibly? And also, what do we mean by using AI responsibly? And also, are we even using it ethically? And my question will be, if AI generated insight and professional judgment point in different directions, how should an evaluator navigate that tension?
Yeah, so for me, I'll prefer human judgment. And I think as evaluators, that's how we are actually trained. Because I think the closest example is actually that of the evaluation field is the same as probably court cases. So every court case has to be presented to a judge because it has got different merits, and it has to be probably argued differently. And it's the same way with evaluation. So we might actually have the same data, probably the same findings from two different communities, but as an evaluator, probably my judgment will be different based on on each and every community's case. So in this case, you find out that AI is just a tool, and the tool is not supposed to supersede the person holding the tool, the tool. So it's supposed to help me make a better decision, basically. But also I can also argue with the tool. Because AI can treat probably an intervention as a success, but maybe for me, for my own evaluative judgment, my own worldview, my own values, that program is not successful, because there's that component of someone else's worldviews and values. They actually inform how we make judgment on an intervention, whether to treat that intervention as a success or not. AI doesn't have a worldview. It doesn't have values. Probably it has got worldviews and values of the people who actually created it, or even the data that was used to train it. So in this case, this is where actually the human become much more important to actually decode in terms of what is actually probably the right decision to take, or maybe what is the right quality of evidence to support a specific decision, which is actually the being the arbiter of the quality of the intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maspaure. Now I'm thinking of a researcher who wants to embark in a journey of conducting a study in a marginalized community or a community with a strict cultural roles. Does reliance on AI risk weakening participatory and community-driven evaluation approaches that depend on relationships and trust building?
I don't think that it weakens us. It actually helps us because it gives us more time to. It can do some other painstaking task in a much more quicker way. It might be probably reviewing literature. If you give it the right prompts, probably you can summarize quite probably large data sets, and actually gives you some quite very interesting probably findings. So it gives us more time that you've been complaining, especially when it comes to engaging with communities, because engaging with communities actually requires quite a lot of time. So in this case, the use of AI actually gives us that time to actually do those kind of things that we used to complain to say we don't have time to actually do it. So it's actually quite beneficial to us to actually do those things. But I think we need to use it in a much more responsible way. It's not supposed to replace where a human is supposed to be doing to be doing specific tasks.
Thank you so much. And a follow-up question to that is that can AI improve triangulation and data verification processes, or does it introduces new risk of error propagation at scale?
So correct use of AI, you can actually it can actually help you make your evaluation much more better. When you talk about triangulation, in most cases, you actually have to tell AI what is it that you want to triangulate. What kind of angle are you actually trying to use to do the triangulation, and why are you even triangulating it? Because even if there's no relationship, AI can do the triangulation and actually hallucinate and give you a report. So the issue is actually that you are sitting with the tool that you need to know how to use. So in this case, you're actually supposed to be able to know what you need to do. Yeah, we can give you Stata, we can give you NVivo, even simple tools like that. If you don't know how to use them, they're still going to produce something for you, but it doesn't mean that it's right. So the issue there is actually that do you actually have do you know the correct do you know the correct use of AI in doing those specific tasks? If you know how to use it, then you're basically going to probably become better as an evaluator and also produce reports that are much more acceptable and also that are also impactful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maspaure, for sharing your thoughts, understanding, and for allowing us to draw from your wisdom and knowledge. It is much appreciated. I will now hand over to Dr. Mdaka and Talita. And before they come in, colleagues, please, if you have questions, just type them on the chat box. We will attend to them at the end of the dialogue. Thank you.
Doc, thank you so much for your insights. What I've taken from you there is that AI is a tool. So I'm starting to look at it as if it's a tool, if it's a system, this then means it needs security, it needs taking care of, it needs protection, it needs babysitting somehow. So that brings us over to Dr. Mdaka's discussion around data governance, accountability, and the skills that we need to ensure that this AI tool is used effectively and efficiently. Dr. Mdaka, welcome. Over to you.
Thank you, Mapaseka, and once more, greetings to members on the platform. And let me start by thanking Dr. Maspaure for the insights that he has just shared now, which pave things into the right perspective. For me, it's like an organization, can procure the most sophisticated platform of AI and available, and still that organization might not be ready to use that platform responsibly. So when we talk about readiness, we should talk about the system, around the technology, what we're doing. We should talk about the quality of the data that we harvest and that we use or we import into the platform. We also should talk about the capabilities of the people that are utilizing that platform. We also need to look at the governance arrangements. What are the policies? What are the ethics that are guiding the use of that? And we also need to clarify some accountabilities so that we know how can we use it responsibly. And it's also that the culture of the organization must also be taken into consideration. So I will start by saying, when we deal with AI, we have to ask ourselves, because we know that it's a tool, we have to ask ourselves, going beyond, can this tool do these things that we want? And ask ourselves, what is it that we want to do? So that we start saying, should I use the tool to do it? And under what conditions do I use this tool to help me do what I want to do? And do I have the right form of data that I need to use? And what kind of oversights that are supposed to be taken into consideration while I'm using this tool? So we need to do find that our readiness of using the tool matters more than our affordability to purchase the tool, because we can purchase the tool, but we might not be able to do what the tool is meant to. Like Dr. Mazore has indicated that we can all put the same prompt into different tools, but the outcomes of those prompt might not be the same, depending on how the tool have learned our practice, the algorithms of what we always ask. So the tool have the capability to give us something. And for us to deal with the readiness aspect of it, we need to start saying, what are the things that are very much crucial for us to handle these platforms? And I've got 5 things that I think is very much easy for us to have and to make sure we practice them. So the first thing is, before we can start using the platform, because there are so many, we need to ask ourselves, what is the problem that we want to solve? And I put a picture there of a grandpa, because I wanted to give an example that, if we have grandpa in your pocket always, and you realize that you're not using it, you're not forced to move around and look for headache so that you can use your grandpa. And by this, I mean that we have plenty of these AI platforms, and we are not forced to go and utilize those platforms. But it is the nature of the problem that we want to solve that should guide us on which platform do you want to use, and for what purpose are we using it? What is the outcome that we want to derive from that platform? The second element that I want to look at for us to be ready to use this platform is the data. We need to talk to the quality of this data. And I'm using the commonly known phrase of garbage in and garbage out, because whatever you put into the platform, it will process whatever you put, and it gives you an outcome that, according to its algorithm, it deems fit. But the question is that it should not supersede the human element, because the human element must have consent to whatever it produces out there. So we need to deal with that. And also at a human level, we need to know, are we able to use this platform accordingly or appropriately? Can we then use this platform to interpret what we want in a monitoring and evaluation arena? As the evaluators, are we handing over our judgment to the platform, or are we maintaining our judgment? And we also need, at an institutional level, we need managers and who are able to provide the relevant access to utilize the platform and the relevant guidance of utilizing the platform, and also the relevant leadership. And with regard to governance, institutions should have rules of how to use these platforms. Because there should be restrictions. There should be information that we should not be able to upload on the platform, and we shouldn't share with anyone who is outside the organization. But if we don't have such rules, and we might find ourselves at a disadvantage. So there is a need to have those rules, and we must also review them as and when the developments are coming in and are proceeding at a high rate. We also need to know which ones do we procure, how do we procure them, and how do we escalate them amongst our members. Because also these platforms, we must understand that someone is in business, and because someone is in business, the access is also limited according to affordability of the nature of the business. So we need to bring that into perspective, and also look at the availability of the infrastructure. As an organization, do we have your consideration for the cybersecurity going beyond just being able to connect? Because our platform might sometimes become vulnerable, and all what we have can be accessed by others. And we also look at, are we able to sustain the use of these platforms? Can we operate these platforms amongst ourselves and amongst themselves? Or like Dr. Mazwaro was saying, we might find ourselves sometimes comparing or getting these platforms just to give us their different opinions on one thing and comparing them, rather than getting what we want. Because as at a human element, we need to understand that we have a problem to solve, and we are using this platform only for efficiency on how do we solve our problem. And coming to governance, we need to look at the risks that are there, the consequences of utilizing these platforms. And I've put in the categories of these risks, where I say I'm saying it is of a low risk just to get the platform to help us to analyze or look for consistency, coherency in the report writing format. But as much as it helps us to do that, we cannot cede our responsibility and our accountability of decision making on what outputs are coming from these AI tools. So we need to be able to use that, and then and allow it to help us to do as much, because it's just a tool, and it's not thinking capacity on our side, but it's a tool to make us efficient in doing our work. And with regard to the consequences, I'm thinking that the beneficiaries that are targeted will be the ones that are, once we know who are the beneficiaries that we target, we should be able to put into perspective the parameters that will help us to deal with that. And also the eligibility of the system to help us to reserve that, because we must always preserve the chain between evidence and responsibility. We should always, at all costs, ensure that we take responsibility for the evidence that it's being produced through the system. And in terms of responding to how these small institutions like NGOs or under-resourced M&E units could access the platform and benefit from its utilization, I'm putting in 4 elements. One is the first thing that is we should always have in mind is that M&E has to deal with evidence that guides the decisions that are supposed to be made, evidence that are supposed to, assist in the development of initiatives, crafting of all improvements initiatives. And those evidence should take into consideration the context within which they are going to be applied, and also the quality of whatever is coming out from the AI. So here you can tell that AI can give you the evidence, but it requires a human nature and the human capabilities to quality assure that, to align it to the context, and also make sure that it's relevant, it's sympathetic to the beneficiaries and the communities. Secondly, in terms of the analysis, AI will be able to help us to get those analysis, and it can give you the patterns and all that, but it is the accountability of the evaluator to ensure that those patterns that are coming out of the AI analysis, they are synthesized and are correct and are leading to assisting towards getting the evidence that is quite right. So the human element it's very much in need, because when AI gives you the first two, the evidence and the analysis and the patterns that are there, we need an evaluator to interpret those, and also to look at the challenges that are there which need to be resolved, and the purpose of utilizing that. We also then say it is the responsibility of the evaluator to make decisions out of the data that is coming from the AI tool. And that should be done with a clear responsibility, and one should be able to take explanation of how did we move to that. And in support of the other organizations, we are saying one example is that we are here now where Clear Anglo and the Clear Path are in agreement to run this. So they are sharing the capabilities of doing that, and they are creating a platform where we can start saying, how do we use these platforms in a secure manner, and how do we ensure that the literacy of using it is very much good to us. And I'm giving a note that we should never allow explanation that comes out to be the algorithm has said so, but it should be we have decided as evaluators, because we deem it fit that we should take such decision. Finally, Chair, I'm looking at the context of what should be different about how we think of the AI in the context of AI governance, in the context of the African continent. And my view is that we know AI is there. We know it has its own algorithms. We know that it has its own format and templates that are in there. But the first thing we need to consider is what we're getting from the AI relevant to our context. So we start calling for institutions to start saying, what is the context that we're working in, and what are the realities within our context? How then can AI be able to help us to deal with the challenges within our context? And also, how do we integrate the language that is in there within our context to help us deal with what we're having? The second thing is that we need to consider an African continent or African states as sovereign states. And being sovereign states, we should not just export from Western countries and become consumers, but we must also look at what is the agency that we have, and how does the data that we generate amongst ourselves talks to creating value within ourselves. And also, we need to look at the inclusion of other models that are coming in so that we evaluate them and check whether they are talking to our communities, and how can we rigorously safeguard them and also make sure that the human accountability is of importance and is not undermined because of the AI platform. And as I conclude, Chair, I would want to say the future of AI in our African state is very much dependent on how the institutions are going to, rally around the governance, the use of those AI tool, because it's just a tool, and this tool, we should know that we need to use it with accountability, and we need to take responsibility, as it only brings efficiency on what we are doing at our level. And I'll conclude by that, Chair, so that we then take questions from the participants, and I'll clarify, because in most cases, when they start asking, is then that you bring everything home and start giving them what they require. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
Dr.
Mapasek.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I see we are gonna run behind time, but I will just ask one or two questions and allow space for Q&A, because I see there's a lot of discussions happening in the chat box, so we don't want to miss that.
Who does the work belong to at the end of the day? And we're going to face those issues as we go on.
Yeah, if we're not able to deal with governance issues, if institutions cannot define what are the rules of governing this, we're going to have such challenges. But I would say, if organizations can hold a bit, take a deep breath, then they will do better. But if the organizations will want to run with the pace of the development, like I said, AI is someone's business, and they make more money if they mass produce and get people getting into the platform. But as evaluators, we must sometimes take a deep breath and start asking ourselves, how can we do better without being influenced and overtaken by these platforms. And at the same time, and organizations and institutions must be able to define what is it that you can derive from the system. What is it that how do we secure ourselves? Let me give an example. If we are about to write a letter and you want it formatted, do you put the letter with the information of the superiors or whoever you want to send it to, or you restrict that and get the body of the message in there? So these are some of the things that institution must start looking around, because if we don't do that, we'll find ourselves trapped, and indeed we might not become owners of this data. Someone who is having a big server out there, because these platforms, they've got somewhere where they deposit this data, and those areas where they deposit have ownership. So we might find ourselves handing ourselves over to someone whom we don't know. Thank you.
Absolutely, Doc. And I think that ties in very well with Joy's question in the chat. Joy is asking, how transparent should AI-assisted analysis be when reporting? So should the evaluators disclose the extent to which they used AI in their analysis or reporting? And I think this is just my addition, that eventually it's going to come out. Because we eventually going to sing the same song. But how transparent do you think evaluators should be, Doc?
Like I said, we can put the same prompt into the platforms, but the output will be not exactly the same. So the transparency level depends on how the data that you're putting in there, because I indicated that the quality of data. If it's the data that you have, you followed your ethics and all that, you already know that even at my stage 1, I've got limitations. Because if this has about privacy, I cannot take Mapaseka's information and plug it on the system. I can't do that because I need to adhere to ethics and all that. Then if we start following that, it becomes easy for us to define the level at which we become transparent, because then the data or the evidence that comes out will still be human owned and not the tool or the system owned. Unless if we're handing it over and we're saying, decide for us, then we must declare that it is not our decisions, it is the decision of these machines.
Yeah.
So that's how I can respond. We still remain responsible, accountable, and therefore it is our decisions that we made based on the efficiency of analysis that we are assisted, but not the decisions. So disclosure should also go with who makes the decision. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Mdaka. Dr. Masvaure, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
There's a there's a couple of people who are missing your face and your voice in the chat.
Okay.
This one is directed to you. In as much as we are trying to decolonize evaluation from African perspective, to what extent are we making progress in this front, given that the curriculum used in most education settings in Africa is still Western-centric? And this is from Jekonia.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for that. I think that's a critical question. But also, before I answer that question, I want to also add to what Dr. Mdaga said about the issue of ethics. I feel like from his presentation, you could hear that there's a governance side from the organizational perspective. Probably this is the organization that is commissioning an evaluation. They need actually to have their standards in terms of the ethical use of AI. But as evaluators also, we also need to have our standards from the other side. So it's basically demand and supply. We all need to have those standards of ethical use of AI. And I don't know if you've got people from SAMIA or from AFRIA, African Evaluation Association. I think it's now urgent for us to actually to come together and actually develop those specific standards to say, if you're going to be using an AI in an evaluation, probably you need to observe these specific ethics. I know at times we don't see eye to eye when we start talking about is it professionalization. But I think this is a critical component of evaluation that we actually need to agree in terms of what is the ethical use of AI. So I just wanted to add that part. And then on your question about decolonization, I'm happy to answer that question now. We are in 2026. And I think most people now, they now know what is made in Africa evaluation. They now know the conversation around decolonizing evaluation. So we, in developing or in indigenizing the M&E curriculum, you need to build a body of evidence first. And I think for the past, let me just say for the past 5 or so years, there's been quite a lot of literature that has been developed around the whole issue about decolonizing evaluation. And I think we are making progress because we started from theorizing and now people are now talking about specific methodologies about decolonizing evaluation. But I think most of the evaluation in practice, we have limited evaluation that can actually AI can be used to train on in terms of decolonizing evaluation. So regarding the curriculum, so this is the point that I want to make. Currently, the biggest commissioners of evaluations, they are basically donors from the global north, in multilateral institutions, bilateral institutions, and those big international NGOs. They are the commissioners of evaluation. So if you're a commissioner, it's your worldview, it's your values that is supposed to be carried out through the evaluation. So they actually dictate the demand of the evaluation skills. So universities are hamstrung. If locally we are not demanding evaluations, then the university have to respond to the actual demand, because you don't want an evaluator who is not going to be functioning in the evaluation space. So a critical thing for us to indigenize the curriculum is actually for us probably as Africans to start commissioning our own evaluations from the programs that we are actually implementing. And the biggest commissioner that we are looking at is actually government departments. They need to be commissioning evaluations for their programs. And once they start commissioning evaluations, they are basically going to come with a different worldview and values that will trigger changes in curriculum. And I think you can see some other universities now, they are teaching their M&E courses to public sector monitoring and evaluation, given the demand, especially in South Africa. But we have very few evaluations that are actually locally funded. You can look on the internet, you see quite a lot of evaluation are actually either funded by international donors, multilateral institutions, bilateral institutions, with very little coming from locally. So we are going somewhere, but slowly. But eventually, probably in the next 10 to 20 years, you'll see some big developments in curriculum, because some of the topics that people didn't want to engage with, like decolonizing evaluation, Made in Africa evaluation, equitable evaluation, they are now much more topical now, because people now realize that they're quite very important. And it's actually those topics that will bring in changes to the evaluation space and decolonize it. So yeah, we are going somewhere. We are going to reach, eventually we will reach the stage where we want. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. For that. I just wanted to take you a little bit back when you touched on ethics. Tanasha is asking, how can evaluators deal with issues associated with AI ethical washing?
Yeah, I don't know. Evaluation is a consultancy. Most of the people who are practicing evaluations, they are consultants. And we know in consultants, you need to do the task and then move on to the next job that gives you money. And there's always that group of unscrupulous people who actually misrepresent things. But I do believe that if I was an organization commissioning an evaluation, I was going to put it in the contract to say, you actually need to state it truthfully. How did you use AI in this evaluation? And you need to tell me, where did you actually use what AI? And then later on, if I discover that you use AI and you did not disclose it to me, then there's supposed to be legal consequences. So it's when it's in your contract, it becomes quite important. And also probably I'll reference what Dr. Mdaga said about actually, when an evaluator signs a contract with you, you actually tell them to say, none of our documents probably are going to be used on AI without our prior approval. Because what people do, they take a terms of reference, plug it in AI, and then AI writes a proposal. They know nothing about it. Probably don't even understand the proposal. They send it, and then someone gets a job. For them to write an inception report, they plug it again in AI. It writes an inception report. They go and collect data. They get the transcript, whatever, plug it in AI. What happens? AI does the analysis and actually use generative AI to write the final report. And in most cases, to unsuspecting commissioners of evaluations, they'll take it as that person's work. But it actually goes against what some of the participants here, like Grace was saying about evaluation is about valuing. And when you're valuing, you come in as an evaluator with a specific worldview and specific values and specific understanding, and apply your evaluative judgment on it. But now, if AI is doing the job, then it becomes a bigger problem. So organizations need to be quite very strict, and people need to declare in terms of how do they use what AI. Like what you do when we talk about data analysis. If we're saying we use Atlas TI to do data analysis, that's it. People know you use Atlas TI, it's quite very good. But now for AI, we also need to declare to say these specific tasks were actually done by AI and then people can narrate in terms of what is it that they did. And then if it's discovered later that is untruthful, then there are supposed to be specific consequences. But it's an emerging area. Even us in universities, we are also struggling. We are currently, it's an evolving issue. Because students also want to use what AI before they even learn how to write. So how to write critically. So in the end, maybe as evaluators are also going to learn from universities how to address that, because also universities, they're actually they're quite new developments, new rules emerging each and every semester around what the use of AI. And I think we are going to win it. And also organizing will learn from universities in terms of what the best practice for use of AI. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Doc. Let me just come to our final question in the chat before we sum up. Tanya is asking, given South Africa's data quality challenges, digital inequality, regulatory obligations, and rapidly evolving risk landscape, how do we ensure that AI enhances decision-making while human judgment continues to provide the contextual understanding and ethical oversight and accountability that is required to deliver fair, explainable, and trustworthy outcomes? Phew, that was a mouthful there, Tanya. I hope you got that, Doc.
So this one I'll give it to Dr. Mdaka. He was talking about it. Yeah, but it's a very interesting question. Yeah.
Digital inequality, regulation, governance. You can come in there, Doc.
Okay, thanks a lot. Tanya, I think your question even relates to what Dr. Mazwaro was talking to about commissioners. First of all, knowing what they want before they commission an evaluation, and then making sure that in their terms of reference, they state clear what they want. So we know that the inequalities that are here in the country are a challenge. Like I've given a state of the inequalities in on the side of institutions. One, the inequalities are caused by the funders, and who also commission what is it that they want. Some of them are there perpetuating, the the existing scenario. But what we need to take into consideration is to ensure that, one, all the AI tools that we use are helping us to be efficient in generating evidence that will help us to make decisions. They should not enhance decision making. They should help us to generate evidence that will, and the patterns and all that will help us to make decisions. Then they should not make decisions themselves. We need to look at, do we have people who are capable to use these tools? Because we can have good tools, but if we don't have capacity of using them, then even the human judgment, can be skewed. We don't want that to be skewed. But if you are able to put the correct prompt, follow-ups and all that, it will then be able to give us the correct stuff. And once you have that combined with the human understanding of the context, the human understanding of the situation, the understanding of ethics and all that, you then are able to use the evidence that is generated from the AI tool, analyze it, assess it, judge it against your understanding of the context, your understanding of what the curriculum wants to achieve. And in that way, if we have people who are evaluators who are becoming true to themselves, we'll start shedding those who are running after money and want to make quick money and move out. It's a question of, can we hold, take a deep breath, and check whatever decisions that we have made. Is it, proof? Can you provide security and proof to ensure that you can come back 5 years from now and still say, I still stand by the decision that I made because I did due diligence to analyze the AI output. And I triangulated and all those sorts of methods that you can do.